Ow, D, O, feel. Boom, 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 boom. Ow, D, O, feel. Ow, D, O, feel. Ow, D, O, feel, feel, feel.
Hello, nice to meet you, Avi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Avi, is there any classical music who would not fit at all for your instrument?
I think, yes, if I try to transcribe maybe, the Wagner operas, maybe that wouldn't fit to the mandolin. But yes, of course. I mean, when I transcribe pieces for the mandolin, it's always either because it has to be both because I really like the piece and I really want to play it. That's usually my first impulse, and of course it has to make sense for the mandolin.
Do you think that transcription can be as good as the original?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's not about being better than the original or not, it's about being different. So, for example, when I transcribe a lot of Bach pieces written for a very different instrument, it's not about showing a better version of Bach, obviously not, but I think it allows a different angle for the music, for the same music. So we all know a Bach concerto for violin in A minor, but I think, or the chaconne that I play a lot, but I think playing it on a mandolin just allows the audience to hear the same piece that maybe they know, maybe not, in a different light, and for me it's also interesting because obviously playing the pieces on the mandolin, different things come out from the music that maybe a violin would play differently, and that's the interesting point for me.
But do you think, even if it is possible to do transcriptions, do we need transcriptions really?
Why not? I mean, this is always challenging to find something creative, innovative in classical music concerts, isn't it? Because it's music that was written many years ago. Usually that's the case, and so the opportunity to rediscover a piece or to listen to it with a different perspective. This is something that me as a mandolin player, as an artist, I'm very privileged for this opportunity. Because that's what would also interest me as an audience.
But is it rather a value for the musician than for the audience? Because is it more value for the musician? I can understand that you want to play other repertoire, but is it also more value for the audience?
I think so as well, exactly from that point. I mean, and the audience, a lot of the people that come to me after concerts, they have similar kind of reaction. So most of them never heard a mandolin in a classical context, and that's always makes me. It's always nice to hear, because you know that you offer them something that they never heard before, that that they discovered something new, and this is a great thing. This is a great one of my favorite things as an artist, to be able to offer that, and so of course also first and for all for the audience. I mean, that's what I play for. That's why I'm an artist, for the audience to play these either new pieces, original transcriptions, whatever music. Just bottom line is just good music, and yes, if I gave them the opportunity to discover something that they didn't know, to hear a piece that they knew in a different way, then it's great. I think.
So it is different in regards of the melody, or of the sound, or of your interpretation. What makes
both,
the difference?
Everything. I think first of all, the sound of the mandolin can raise a lot of different associations. Especially the mandolin, unlike any other instrument, it's very. It has all this quality of of being associated with different cultures. When I play Italian music on the mandolin, it sounds very Italian. When I play Russian composition on the mandolin, it sounds very Russian. When people play bluegrass or American music, it fits as well, country music. So it has this quality to sound different and to have a different character with every piece that I choose to play. And sometimes it's also, especially in Bach, for example, the chaconne that Bach wrote for violin. So violinists always have to, because it's written, the first theme is written in chords. Mm-hmm. So 3 and sometimes 4 notes played together. Mm-hmm. Now, because of the physicality of the violin, where the strings are a little bit curved, mm-hmm. you cannot play 4 notes at the same time, so you have to break the chord. So the chaconne on the violin would sound something like.
But of course, violinists try to have 3 notes together.
Exactly. So. Exactly, and the opportunity to play it on a plucked string, like. To play the chord, you have a more clear kind of a harmony progression with it. So this is just an example of how the piece for a violin would sound significantly different on a mandolin.
So you have more the harmony thing than the melodic thing.
Yes, as one example.
And so when you're playing the mandolin, when you put on the fingers on the string, you touch both strings?
Yes, absolutely. One of the characteristics of a mandolin, what makes the sound a mandolin sound, is that the fact that each string comes in pair. You always press both and you always pluck both.
But you only can play with pluck, no bow or anything like this, or you can't preparate it. Yeah.
Who knows how bad that would sound with the bow?
It's like a viola from the size.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'll try that. I'll let you know. And of course, with a pick.
Okay.
Historically, the pick used to be either from wood or turtle gash, and of course now it's plastic. And it's just the characteristic of the sound comes from the double string. So if I try to play one string, it would sound very thin. So that what makes the volume of the sound a bit wider.
But you can't put your finger just on one string,
no,
so that you have 4 more.
No, not really, because it's too small. You see, I have also big fingers, but you always they're very close together, so there's no chance to, and no reason really to press one.
But do you have the chance to modify the sound of the instrument somehow? Or is it always this characteristic mandolin sound?
No, it has so many colors and nuances, and especially this mandolin. But there are so many ways from the left hand, from the right hand, with the pick on the position of the string that you pluck. There are many colors to this instrument, and of course I'm using as much as I can. So in terms of it's like any other classical instrument, like the violin and the cello, and it has all this range of colors and of dynamics that I'm using, definitely.
And are you using different picks, so a softer one or
a pick is it's a good question, because a lot of people ask me if this is a mandolin pick. No, it's just a pick that guitarists can use, and the picks are different. This is a very light pick. Some of them are very thick, and this has to do with the resistance that they have once you pluck on a string. The resistance that the pick has, if it bends or how much it bends with a string. So it's a very personal. There is no like a mandolin pick that
personal taste.
Exactly, very personal taste. It has to do with the structure and the strength you have in your hand, And so I always use this red one. 0.58 millimeters. But funny
very
enough,
important.
yes, no, that's what I'm used to. But it's changed also through the years. I tried so many picks. But the interesting thing that for recordings I use a little bit thicker one, just one step thicker than this.
To get a higher volume, or why?
The opposite. I mean, to get more round sound as opposed to volume, because when you record, usually the microphone is right here. You don't have to, project to a big concert hall, but you have to really play to a very small membrane that is, or capsule that is very near the mandolin. So then I choose, a thicker pick, and I gain some of a rounder sound. For that distance, that works.
And are there existing different sizes of mandolins, like balalaika?
Definitely, yes. There's the whole family of. It's like in string instruments. You have the violin, violino, which is like a small viola, and then violin, viola, cello, double bass.
Okay.
You also see like a mandolin, mandola.
And this is?
Mandolin cello. This is a mandolin. So it's tuned exactly like the violin. It has the same range. It has the same tuning.
GDAE.
Exactly.
Okay.
GDAE.
Interesting.
Yes.
But is this an old instrument?
No, it's actually quite modern. It's from '98. It looks old because
Yes.
I use it a lot.
It looks
Poor mandolin. All the scratches. But no, it's a builder from Israel, a builder from a mandolin maker from Tel Aviv that I've known for many years, and kind of developed. I wouldn't say together, but he started to make his mandolins, and for a very long period of time, I would play his instrument and give him feedback, and I would go and say to him, Arik Kerman, his name is Arik, I want more basses, and here I want more, bright sound, and we would take the mandolin back in his atelier and do something inside that would make the basses sound more bassy and higher, more, and so he's really a genius that and arrived to a certain level of masterizing the way that the balance that acoustically this instrument behaves, that he could really bring the mandolin to the state of like being very loud enough for a big concert hall without using any amplification.
But when you're doing like the Yellow Lounge tomorrow evening, are you using a pickup?
I'm not sure. We'll have to see there. This is the mandolin is surprisingly loud. I mean, when I play with the orchestras, most of the times I don't need amplification. It really depends on how big the orchestra is. But recitals, even in big halls, I never use amplification. So it's relatively loud. So I'm not sure. I mean, we have a sound check. Obviously, the Yellow Lounge is in a club, so it's a different acoustic situation. But we'll see. I'm curious to see if we'll use that or not.
But why is in Israel the mandolin so famous or so popular?
I'm not sure it's that popular. I mean, I think there is an historical reason for that, because it was very popular in the 30s and in the 40s, all over Europe actually. The mandolin at that period of history, so talking about practically the first half of the 20th century, was very popular as an amateur instrument, and especially as in forms of mandolin orchestras or mandolin clubs, they call it sometimes. So you see it in Italy, in Germany, in Poland, in Russia, all throughout Europe, and then of course with the immigration also in the States, in New York, in South America. You have mandolin orchestras with the idea of like just gathering together after work and making music together at the time where CDs and MP3s weren't available, to relive the music that you liked in the opera.
So like a housewife instrument.
Maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah, there were a lot of women that play the mandolin as well. But you see old pictures from the beginning of 20th century of mandolin orchestras, talking about from 10 people to even 60 or 70 people, very mixture, obviously, people, and yes, the tradition, the idea of that was to gather in the evening after work and to play just for fun, the famous arias from Verdi opera, from Rossini, the schlagers of that time. And that idea came to Israel, funny enough, with the socialists movement. So the pioneers that established kibbutz brought a little bit this tradition from East Europe, and therefore from the 30s to the 60s almost every kibbutz in Israel had a mandolin orchestra, almost by definition. So it was a very interesting thing to discover, while I was researching a little bit this topic, to see how much like the musical life of a kibbutz was exactly this combination of appreciation for classical music, yet playing an instrument that is kind of after work instrument that is very user friendly in a way.
But they were playing classical melodies.
Oh yes.
And not folklore or something like this.
Mainly classical.
Okay.
Mainly classical, because classical music was an important part of their cultural life, something that they brought with them from Europe. But I'm sure also some new Israeli songs and some folk Jewish songs, definitely.
I do remember at our music school there was also a mandolin class.
Really?
But the teacher was from Turkey.
Oh yes, I mean, the mandolin. You see it in all over the world, and if it's not the mandolin, also there are many instruments, black string instruments, similar to the mandolin, that are typical for different cultures. The oud for North Africa, Arab music. In Turkey, it's the saz. In the Balkans, it's the tamburica. In Spain, it's the banduria. It's the banjo in America. In South America, charango. Bouzouki in Greece, and so on, and balalaika in Russia, in China. The people, I can go on. But to make my point, this is the black string instrument, so similar in sound to the mandolin, always played the main role in very ancient musical cultures, and in all over the world. And that's what also makes the mandolin itself very easily associated with different types of music.
Also a versatile instrument,
Definitely.
would you say? Okay.
Yeah.
But why don't you play folk music?
Well, I do play folk music.
But why do you have to play classical music?
Do you want me to stop playing classical music?
No, not at all, but I want to understand.
I think I don't know, it's just a personal path, I think, because when I grew up, I started to learn the mandolin. I studied classical music. I went to the music academy. Classical music is my first love.
But you have been into rock music too.
Also, yeah.
Could you play rock on your instrument?
Well, not on this one, but I used to have a electric guitar.
Okay.
And I used to play the drums. That's true. I had the privilege, I think, to play a lot of different styles of music. But somehow always classical music, especially with the mandolin, was the main thing I always did. And the main thing I still do. Playing folk music started with about 10 years ago with an encounter with Giora Feldman, a clarinet player.
Oh, I love him.
And me too.
He's so great.
I know.
And such a nice man.
He is. And my first meeting with him was really a formative experience, because I admired his music, and I told it to a friend, and he said, "Oh, I'm a good friend with Giora Feldman." And he set up an appointment. I was like, can't believe I'm sitting with Giora Feldman. And then at a certain point, of course, he said, "Okay, take the mandolin out and let's start to play." And I said, "What should I play? What do you want to hear?" And he said, like, "Just improvise." My head's like, I don't know how do you improvise. And
that's something you never learned at the music academy, right?
That's not something you learn, unfortunately, in the music academy. But he just say, play, as simple as that. And so I played, and that was the first time I said, like, wow, I can improvise, and we jammed, we played together for another 2 hours, and it was amazing.
Wow.
And then afterwards, he took me on his band, and we toured for a couple of years together, and it really opened my horizons because as a classical musician, you're trained to to stick with the music and
Play the
nothing.
correct note.
Exactly, and everything that is not the correct note is a mistake. And with
Yes.
improvised music is a little bit the opposite. There is no correct notes. I mean, everything is correct. You see, so I really like this duality. Of course, playing some folk music and being having some experience with improvised music and jazz gives me a lot in my classical concerts. It gives a lot to me as an artist, and vice versa. Being classically trained, being aware to all the colors and the finesse of classical music, especially when playing chamber music.
And also the finger technique, right?
Yeah, as well, I guess. Yeah, that's true. It gives me a lot also when I play with groups that play folk music. So I really enjoy that words feeding each other.
Like the David Orlovsky trio,
Yes, exactly.
which you joined for CD, right?
Definitely, yeah. I'm a guest artist on 3 of their CDs,
wow.
and that's another great example of how, like, it's chamber music practically, and very kind of complex compositions, but still it has this very folkish spice into it and approach.
If you had to choose between different types of folk music, which would you prefer? Is it the Russian folk music, or is it your traditional Israel with klezmer? Or
For me, it's really in periods, and now I hear a lot of Arab music, for example, a lot of Egyptian music, Kultum. It's just in each year I have like a period, last year was Brazilian. I heard a lot of Brazilian music and shore music. And,
do you play samba or tango on
for
your
fun.
violin?
Yeah,
violin, mandolin. Sorry.
Yes, I recorded actually on my album. I recorded a Piazzolla track with Giora Feidman and with Richard Galliano, the accordion player. We played tango, but yeah, I mean, I'm personally very curious about very different kinds of music. So if you see my iPod collection, you think it's it's like it's very non-consistent.
Okay.
I have everything there, and I like to hear and especially to discover all kind of different music. So, and it's really in periods, like everyone. I have some now in. And I play a lot. I mean, obviously klezmer because I played many years with the Gioa and it's part of my tradition. But a lot of Balkan music as well. I played with a trio I have in New York, an accordion player and a percussionist.
Do you think you could be an ambassador for Israel?
Well, first of all, I'm Israeli. That's where I come from. That's where I consider home. So of course, it's part of the identity. It's what made me the musician I am. An ambassador, I think, being an artist, you are and not a political ambassador. You are an ambassador of beauty and of humanism, and of aesthetics. Of art and all what it stands for. I think this is the main thing that I can be and want to be ambassador of.
So no political meaning at all?
No.
Okay. And but you mentioned that you are now a little bit into Israel music and klezmer. So for this new CD, which is Between Worlds, there are a lot of different works also from other composers, Bartok, for example. Would you play for me one of the Romanian folk dances?
Sure. This is the one.
That's what I played at the music high school. When I entered the music high
Really?
school,
You
yes.
play violin or piano?
Violin.
So these are. Very simple song, isn't it?
I love it, but it sounds really different. With the violin, you have two strings at once, playing at once. So, that's
of course, I
that's
rearrange it.
But how do you manage the flageolets? I think it is number 5 or number 6.
Yes, that's true. I'm doing something different. I'm doing a kind of a sul ponticello. So. I like to give it just a different color than the. So it's really, for me, it's like a meditative atmosphere and very kind of still. The orchestra or the piano goes in ostinato. It's one of my favorite dances, and it's a very atmospheric dance. So I like to give it a more folky color. I like to imagine it as a different instrument, maybe more oriental instrument, and to give it that color using. Just playing near the bridge gives this a different color.
Okay, and how does the chardash work?
The chardash, it's funny because the whole idea of the album is composers that wrote classical music. They wrote music for concert halls, for classical instruments like piano, string quartet, and so on, but very much inspired by folk music. Most of the cases, like Bartók, are inspired of their own culture. So Bartók went to villages in the Balkans and collected authentic melodies and tunes from the peasants, from village people. Exactly, and same case for De Falla. Manuel De Falla did the same thing with Spanish music, and Piazzolla with tango, and Villa-Lobos with choro music, with Brazilian music, and Dvořák, who went to America and to invent the American classical music, but he did also for Slovenian music. So there are a lot of examples in the first half of the 20th century of composers that really integrated the folk music into concert music. But the result was always music that was written like art music, that was written to be performed in a concert hall. The chardash, for example, is an interesting case where a composer doesn't write a piece influenced by his own folk culture, but by another folkloristic elements. So Vittorio Monti is an Italian, he's a Napolitan composer, but he writes the chardash, which is an Hungarian popular form of music, in Hungarian style. The chardash is super famous. Everyone played it on every combination possible in the world, and usually most of the interpretations you hear takes it more to the Hungarian gypsy style, so with all the nuances and the characteristic they have, changing a little bit the beats and so on. What was interesting for me to do in the context of this album is to really take the original score and to see what Vittorio Monti wrote in there. And it's amazing how everything is written like a good Italian. Everything, all the accelerando and the colors, piano, forte, is written in the score in a very classical way. And a little bit what we try to do is to bring the chardash a little bit more back to Italy, to Naples, to play it more as a Napolitan composer would imagine Hungarian music, as opposed to playing Hungarian music
with the view of an Israel musician,
with a French accordionist who plays, also jazz. Yes,
perfect.
In Berlin. So exactly to play with all these elements. This album is really it was a playground for me, where each of these pieces had opportunity to examine the borders. Where does it sound folk? Where does it sound classical? How can I break the classical elements and to make them more folky, and how I can make the folk elements more classical, and so on. So in each and every track, the treatment is differently, but the result and the idea behind it is always this.
So it's always between worlds.
I guess, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audi. Oh, feel. Boom, boom, boom.